We're opening up that red row as well. So if you're not finding a spot, red row it is. All right, the doors are closed. That just means that clasp an elbow and really use the rotation of your whole shoulder. You can get some pretty good circles on your paper. They don't have to be perfect though. She isn't a perfect circle, but the more circles you add, the better it helps you kind of learn how to draw circles. But once we have a good number of circles in here, we're starting to like our shapes. We're going to go in here and add some guidelines. A vertical line straight down the center, and I'm going to add a horizontal line right in the middle as well. So we'll have a big plus sign right in the center of our circle. From here, we're going to go right on either side here of her head. And I'm going to go ahead and add some guidelines for myself. 2 diagonal lines in the shape of a V. I'm really cutting these rainbows in half, so that way we have 4 equal pizza slices at the top of her head and just 2 at the bottom. Now this right here is super important because Minnie and Mickey are drawn in a very particular way. They are drawn so that way the 3 circles that they are made up of are super recognizable and so easy to read that as soon as you see those 3 circles, you're like, that's Mickey Mouse. And if you see a bow in the middle, you're like, that's Minnie Mouse, immediately. Now, the ear here should be about half the size of your circle as well. So, if you're feeling like you've gone too small, go bigger. It's always better to have bigger ears than smaller, because smaller ears will give you Minnie the Chipmunk or Minnie the Bear Cub, which is cute, but you want Minnie Mouse. And so if you give her super big ears, she just looks like baby Minnie, and that's still Minnie Mouse. So I'm going in here with my 2 circles for her ears, and now that I have a good silhouette here for my mouse, I'm going to go back in and add more detail to really bring her forward. Because right now this just looks like a hidden Mickey, which we've got lots throughout the park. And we even have one on the stage. Does anybody know what our hidden Mickey is? Yeah, the drum set, yeah, right at the very top here of the stage. But now that we've got those 3 circles, let's go ahead and add in her nose. And her nose is going to start with an oval right underneath your horizontal guideline. I'd say about the size of a grapefruit olive. And again, you're using your shoulder for this shape too. Once you start liking the lines here for her nose, you want to go back in and lock them in nice and dark here. We really want those lines to be forward in our sketch. So we go back over them and really darken them in. I'm going to lock in her nose, and I'll even add some tone and shading to it to add a little extra credit here as well. From here, I'm going to go right above and add in her nose bridge, or her snout line, which is this rainbow curve that just sits right above her nose, just as wide as her nose as well. From here, I'm going to go below to add in her smile, but to figure out where her smile lays, I actually use her nose and the bottom of my circle to measure that space out. I'll find the middle, and I'll add a little tick mark here, and we want to stretch out a nice wide smile for Minnie Mouse. Minnie is a pretty happy-go-lucky, optimistic character, and when she got her start in animation, she was also very silly and very much like a funny, like trickster, prankster, kind of like Mickey. That's kind of how they started off, and then over the years they became more important to the company. They really became the faces of the company, so they kind of had to clean up their act. But the version of Minnie Mouse that we're drawing here in this class today is actually Steamboat Minnie version of Minnie Mouse. And so she kind of looks definitely closer to the way that she appeared. Does anybody know what she debuted in? What was her first ever cartoon? It was with Mickey Mouse in his first ever cartoon. Steamboat Willie, yeah, that's correct, yeah. I kind of gave it to you in the name, but it's totally fine. Because, I mean, for Minnie Mouse, I feel like it's less talked about what her first ever cartoon was. You definitely know what Mickey's first ever cartoon was. But they both starred in that same cartoon together. Technically, they were also animated in a different cartoon before Steamboat Willie, but that one was the very first one that was released to the public because it had a technological achievement that hadn't been seen before. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Kind of, yes. I heard talking. It's not talking exactly, but it is sound. Synchronized sound hadn't been seen in, well, film in general, right before this one. There was one film that came out before it as well that was like a live action film that had sound. But Walt Disney was the very first animated he was the first cartoonist to ever release a film with sound. So we heard sound effects, we heard music playing as the film was going on, but there was no live orchestra, there was no live band making these sounds possible, which is how you would have watched it in theaters before. Way before, 1928 to be exact. So, I mean, it's definitely a long time. I feel like we definitely take sound for granted. I'm adding in this letter U curve here, really giving her a nice big open mouth smile here. And this right here is just gonna make her look extra super happy, which is super important for our mouse again, because she's very happy-go-lucky and optimistic. And I'm also gonna add in her tongue here, right at the very base of her mouth. And it's just these two little rainbow curves here, pretty small, super easy. Once we have that smile though in place, I do like to add some tone and shading here to the back of her mouth, just to add, again, extra credit, but also some depth here to your drawing. So just really make it look a little bit more complete. And right below her smile, I'll also add a lower lip, which is another letter U curve that follows the curve of her smile. This right here puts us at almost halfway done. The last thing we need for the bottom half of her face are just her cheeks here that sit right above her smile lines. Now her smile lines are these little rainbows that we added at the ends of her smile. And her cheeks are going to be these smaller, taller rainbows as well that rest right above that horizontal line. Now that we have these little rainbows here for her cheeks, we can really just follow the curvature of her head shape of that circle and just connect all of our lines back down to her lower lip. And this right here gets us at about halfway done with Minnie Mouse. So how are we feeling? Great. Okay, everyone else is super focused. I like that as well. Well, that's all right if you're not quite seeing Minnie just yet, because honestly, this looks like Mickey Mouse. So we'll get to that in just a second. Just say you need help. That's okay. I mean, yeah, take your time. And we're just going to go kind of slow here as we lock in her features for her smile here. And I want to tell you guys a little bit more about Miss Minnie Mouse here. Or technically, her full name is Minerva Mouse. And nobody really calls her Minerva unless you're like her parents or you're mad at her, which I think is an impossible task. I don't know how you could ever be mad at Minnie Mouse. But Miss Minnie Mouse here, she does get her start with Mickey, and oftentimes she shares a lot of things with Mickey Mouse, like their anniversary, which makes sense because, you know, they starred in Steamboat Willie, but that also counts as the first day that they started dating. So their birthday and their anniversary share a date. Does anybody know how old and how long they've been dating? 100 years. A little less than 100. That's actually the age of the company. A little younger. 96. A little younger than 96. A little higher than 80. 87. A little higher. 95. I heard it. They are 95 years old. Really, really close to 100. They're just like 5 years off. Minnie and Mickey didn't debut with the company. The company started 5 years earlier. So when you think of Disney Animation did hit 100 years this past October. But Minnie and Mickey, they only hit their 95th birthday, which is a pretty big milestone for sure, and their 95th dating anniversary. They are not yet married. It's really interesting, just an interesting note, you know. Never seen it. Maybe Mickey's waiting for the 100-year anniversary to pop the question. Because Minnie is definitely a very patient woman. Now that we've got her half of her face here on our page, let's move on up and add in her eyes. And our eyes are super important because they are these very tall, solid black ovals here. So I'm going to very lightly just add in these ovals, kind of peeking out from behind her snout here. And again, take your time with these. Ovals are definitely one of the harder things to draw, just like circles. So really use your shoulder here if you feel like you are not getting successful circles. And just light lines, that'll really help. Not only do Minnie and Mickey share a birthday and anniversary, obviously, but they also shared a voice actor right at the very beginning of their career. Does anybody know who Minnie's very first voice actor was? Walt Disney, yeah. Walt Disney was definitely one of the kinds of people who, if he could not find somebody to do the job, he would do it himself, and he auditioned a lot of people for both Minnie and Mickey. Couldn't quite find anybody, and so he voiced both mice at the very beginning. Eventually, they did get their own voice actors, and like a few throughout the years. I am shading in these ovals here nice and solid black, since I am drawing the Steamboat Willie version of Minnie Mouse. So making sure that these are nice and dark here. If you give her pupils, she'll look more like modern day Minnie. But once we have these ovals here on our page, this is looking a lot like Mickey Mouse. So let's add some distinctions here to really make it look more like Minnie. One thing that she needs to make her look like herself is what?
Lashes.
Her bow, absolutely. But what about on top of her eyes? Eyelashes, that's correct. However, in this classic style, her eyelashes don't actually touch the tops of her pupils. They sit higher up in her face on her character mask. And a character mask is an interesting little feature here for these mice. It's that black letter M that you see right around their face. In the 1920s, it was super beneficial because it helped frame the character's face and eyes since animation was black and white ink. I've started with what looks like a widow's peak right at the very top of her head shape, and I'm really just following the curve there of my circle all the way around to those guidelines that help me place her ears. Once I get there, I'm going to flip that line and bring the letter C down to connect to her cheek. And this right here is Minnie's character mask. It's also the same step if you were to draw Mickey Mouse as well. So, I mean, right now, you could definitely call it quits and be like, I drew Mickey, and that's that. But if you've already drawn Steamboat Mickey with us, then you definitely want to keep going here to add in Minnie's eyelashes. Now, her eyelashes actually connected right at the very top here of this character mask. So I'm going to go to that letter V here, to the point, and bring over this rainbow curve. And again, you just want to aim for that diagonal line that you used for her ears. So we'll do that same exact thing on the other side. This will count as her eyelids, and her eyelashes will sit right on top. So I'm going to go ahead and add about 3 flicks of my pencil to add in those eyelashes right at the very tops of her lids. Now, one thing about 1920s cartoons is definitely very different than the kind we see today. Instead of eyes, her whole character mask would have been the space for her eyes, and so her pupils would have bounced around in that space, and that's why her eyelids are so high. But now that we've got that there on our paper, we are good to lock in the full shape here of her head, as well as her character mask if you haven't already done that. So I'm going to take my time here and go all the way around my circle, just bringing it forward here in my sketch. And if you remember, Minnie and Mickey do have a darker character mask, so it is shaded in. So once you've locked in her head shape, you could even add some tone and shading to kind of really make her character mask look a little bit more like she just came out of a 1920s cartoon. Now, Minnie here, eventually, when she gained her own voice actresses, one of them, my favorite story anyways, is a voice actress by the name of Russi Taylor. Now, Russi Taylor was Minnie's voice actor or actress for the longest period of time. I want to say over 30 years for sure. Now, Russi Taylor was the voice actress for Minnie Mouse, and Mickey was voiced by a gentleman by the name of Wayne Allenwine. Both of them kind of met and they worked together for quite some time as both of these mice. They fell in love and they got married, which I think is super duper sweet because Minnie and Mickey aren't married. So it's kind of like their voices are, and that makes me just as happy. Now, before we lock in her ears here, we do need to give her her accessory, which you guys said was what? Her bow, yeah. You could definitely give her earrings. That's that's fine. Up to you. This is your Minnie Mouse. You can totally go like a little bit, off script. But for her accessory, in the more classic style of Minnie Mouse, in the Steamboat Willie version, she actually wears a hat. And her hat here is kind of look a little bit like a nurse's hat for a second, but it is a flower pot hat. So we'll start with these letter C curves that overlap her ears and a rainbow here to connect them. We want one more rainbow right up at the top here in between her ears, and to add in the flower here, that is our last step for her accessory. Does anybody remember what kind of flower she has?
Daisy.
A daisy, that's correct. And the daisy here, that could have just been Walt Disney's favorite flower. It could have been one of the easier flowers to animate, or maybe it was his wife's favorite. Whatever the case, we do see it a lot in Walt Disney's work. We see it on Minnie Mouse, his very first character, Hortensia. We even get it again when it comes to Daisy's actual name, Daisy Duck. So coincidence? I don't know, who knows? But now that you've got her hat, you are good to lock in her ears here all the way around. And again, if you added shading to her character mask, don't forget to add the shading to her ears as well, as it is all that same solid black color. But once you've locked in her ears, it is the last bit of detail that you need for your very own version of Steamboat Willie Minnie Mouse. Anything else you add from here on out is going to be extra credit and up to you. You can definitely add Mickey in the background. You can add a bunch more daisies if you'd like. Maybe she's frolicking through a field. But find a spot and sign your name nice and big and proud, because you've just drawn your very own Miss Minerva Mouse. All right, so most important question, did you guys have a good time? I love it. Well, I got a little over my time, so I'm going to give you guys a big round of applause for drawing with me, start to finish, and not giving up. You guys definitely deserve it. Those drawings are for you guys to keep, so do take them off your boards and take them home with you. And you're all graduates, so you can find or come back and visit us again. If we don't see you again, though, have a fabulous rest of your day, everybody, and class is dismissed. Bye, guys.
Round of applause.